Welcome from DrupalCon San Francisco 2010. So, one of the great presentations was on CSS3, and I want to show you some quick demos of some of the tools that Jen Simmons in her presentation shared, some links on the web. So, come along for a quick ride. Okay, CSS3 is a great way to ditch Photoshop and start making rounded corners, use real fonts, use real gradients, multiple backgrounds, and a whole bunch of great stuff just in CSS in the browser. One of the great things about it is there's lots of fun tools online to help you build CSS3. So this first one is called borderradius.com. You can come to this website, border-radius.com, and start plugging in borders. And okay, now every corner has a border of 20. Now this one has a border of 60. There's a really rounded border down there of 100. And this tool has just generated the CSS for me. Notice that because these standards are still emerging, there's some lines of code here that do this in WebKit, then in Mozilla, and then the generic standard CSS3 that will apply to all browsers comes last. Here's a tool for generating gradients, box shadows, all kinds of things. I can start with some box shadows. So drop shadows. No longer do you have to build this in Photoshop. Now you can build this right in the web in CSS. So I've just built a box shadow and told it to be different distances. Ooh, there we go. A beautiful box shadow, and it gives me the code for it. I can grab that CSS and go put it in my page. There are also transforms. This same tool does transforms, which basically means you can take a piece of text, a div, and scale it 2D and 3D all over the place. So here we go. Okay, I'm shifting this thing over. Now I'm scaling it a little bigger. Now I'm rotating it a little. Whoa! I'm gonna shift it a little more left. Skew it. Whoa! Where is that? Oh my gosh. Okay. And after all that, this is still text that I can copy and paste because this is just CSS applied to text. Another great tool is called CSSgenerator.com. Lets you build things like text shadows, for example. So you just pick what kind of thing you want to build, and you start filling in some settings, and you get a, there we go, and you get a text shadow. Ooh, that's ugly, but I was able to build a text shadow, play with it, see what it would look like in my browser, and copy out the little bit of CSS code here that I need to put in my page. Same thing with multi-column layouts. CSS3 now does multi-column layouts. So, do I want a 3-column layout with a gap of 20 pixels? There's what it looks like. And it just filled in some text and gave me the CSS to plug into my page. RGB Alpha, RGBA is also supported. So that means that I can build a piece of code and color foregrounds, backgrounds, anything, but give an alpha channel to that. So here the background, this red background, is just 0.1 opacity, slightly red. And lastly, there are gradients. There's a couple different tools. This is called gradients.glrzad.com, and there's also gradients back at the other tool, the westsiv.com tools that we showed. There are linear gradients that let you transition from one color to another in a linear direction and, move it all different ways. There's also radial gradients that do all kinds of different wacky, spherical-based gradient things. And, okay, there we go. I've just created a gradient that's, there we go. That's a radial gradient for my site. And again, You play with these things, you see them on the web, you copy them out of the box and into your CSS. Fonts are also great in CSS3, and there are two tools that Jen recommended. One is called fontsquirrel.com. This is free fonts for commercial use, and they're free. They come in kits, it's curated, so they're really high quality. Of course, you've probably heard of typekit.com, which is more of a paid service where you can buy the rights to different fonts. But either way, you get great sets of fonts. This is Font Squirrel, that are really high quality and decent and free for use. Jen recommended that fonts are great, these custom fonts for headings, for navigation bars, like here's a custom font over here. They're not so great yet for body text, simply because when they degrade in other older browsers, like say IE, where it won't use these fonts, or it'll try to use a nearby font, but it will degrade and be really fuzzy and edgy, whereas on a Mac, the fonts come out really crisp and nice. But that means that you don't want your body copy to degrade poorly on some computers. For your navigation bars and bigger text, it might be fine and people wouldn't notice. But body copy, maybe you want to stick with one of the normal standard web fonts for now. This is still a little cutting edge. Finally, the recommendations. So CSS3 is partially implemented by different browsers and partially completed. Some of the W3C standards are just candidates, proposals, drafts. This website, w3.org/style/css/current-work, is the guide to what is finished and what is in progress. You can see all the different parts of CSS, like text, like fonts that are at different stages of being final standards, and different browsers support them differently. So come here for the latest work. And with CSS3, you can do really amazing things. This page is an animation, actually. CSS3 has a set of animation tools. This is an animation built entirely in CSS. This only runs on WebKit. It's not supported in other browsers, but all these things are different objects that are being animated with CSS3. And for degrading into older browsers, there's a great tool called Modernizer, without the ending E, Modernizer, that is a JavaScript library that helps you create styles that will work in older browsers just fine, because, for example, you can use this class called multiple backgrounds, and it will only put multiple backgrounds onto elements when they happen to be viewed in browsers that will allow multiple backgrounds. So this is a JavaScript library, Modernizer, that we may want to check out. Also, Jen recommended when you're writing the Mozilla and WebKit versions and then the standard version, that for now we use the standard version last, so that it kind of overrides and applies in the end, and use the -moz and -webkit versions earlier above those. There's a couple great books she recommended, and a website called css3.info that's a great place to watch for news. The book is by Dan Cederholm, the guy who's written some great books on CSS-based layouts. The new book is called Handcrafted CSS, More Bulletproof Web Design, published by New Writers. And we should definitely check it out. So those are some of the things Jen shared. Her philosophy on CSS3 is that CSS3 is not supported in all browsers. It's really cutting edge, but that we should just start using it. That it's fine. If things degrade in IE, that's fine. They won't get their rounded corners. They won't get their drop shadows. They won't quite get their custom font, but that's fine. We can still start using it today anyway. Things will just degrade slightly in older browsers. And also, she says ditch Photoshop, that it's no longer worth your time spending hours custom pixel precise, tinkering to get something to look exact in Photoshop, because it simply is not going to look that way in browsers. You're better off forgetting about Photoshop. Photoshop can't even do these transforms and some of these things that CSS3 can do. Just start with CSS. Start doing your web designs in a browser, writing CSS. You'll see exactly how they work there. That's what Jen Simmons shared with us here at DrupalCon San Francisco about CSS3. Thanks.